Carrie's decision to donate a portion of her upcoming tour's proceeds to organizations that foster respectful dialogue and empower young people to speak up for themselves was met with widespread praise. It was seen as a natural extension of her message and values. While the buzz around the viral moment was still fresh, Carrie's focus remained on using her platform for good, rather than exploiting the attention for personal gain. Her manager had suggested capitalizing on the moment by doing a follow-up interview with a friendlier host, or producing a short documentary about the power of speaking out. But Carrie wasn't interested in turning it into a marketing opportunity. She knew this was about more than just visibility. It was about making a meaningful difference. Her decision not only spoke to her integrity, but also solidified her position as a role model who led with purpose, staying true to the values that mattered most to her. Carrie's decision to donate a portion of her upcoming tour's proceeds to organizations that foster respectful dialogue and empower young people to speak up for themselves was met with widespread praise. It was seen as a natural extension of her message and values. While the buzz around the viral moment was still fresh, Carrie's focus remained on using her platform for good, rather than exploiting the attention for personal gain. Her manager had suggested capitalizing on the moment by doing a follow-up interview with a friendlier host, or producing a short documentary about the power of speaking out. But Carrie wasn't interested in turning it into a marketing opportunity. She knew this was about more than just visibility. It was about making a meaningful difference. Her decision not only spoke to her integrity, but also solidified her position as a role model who led with purpose, staying true to the values that mattered most to her. Carrie's decision to let her actions speak for themselves resonated deeply with her fans, and the message quickly went viral. Thousands of people shared it, telling their own stories of finding the courage to stand up for themselves. What began as a single moment had transformed into a movement, one rooted in the belief that everyone deserves to be heard and respected. As Carrie stepped onto the stage for her next concert, the roar of the crowd reminded her that sometimes the strongest voice is the one that speaks with grace and conviction. The lesson was clear. Standing firm in your beliefs isn't just about winning an argument. It's about inspiring others to find their voice too. Carrie's impact was undeniable, and the world was listening. Next morning, with a quiet sense of purpose, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram had exploded with clips of her response. Hashtags like Carrie Underwood Clapback and Authenticity Matters were trending within minutes. The responses were overwhelmingly positive. Fans praised Carrie's composure and grace, while others who hadn't been fans before expressed newfound respect for her. Even some of Melanie's regular viewers joined in, calling out the host for her aggressive approach. Carrie just schooled her, one comment read, accompanied by a gif of applause. It wasn't just social media taking notice. By the next morning, major news outlets had picked up the story. Headlines ranged from "Carrie Underwood stands her ground in heated interview" to "Country star delivers viral clapback." The moment had become more than just a viral clip. It had sparked a cultural conversation about respect, authenticity, and standing firm in your beliefs. But as the world dissected the interview, Carrie reflected on it with her usual IET resolve, knowing this wasn't just about the attention, it was about something deeper. The next morning, Carrie woke up to her phone buzzing with notifications. Friends, family, fans, even people she hadn't spoken to in years were sending messages of support. Headlines and viral clips flooded her social media feeds, each one praising her poise and dignity. But Carrie wasn't looking for validation. For her, the real impact came from the messages of everyday people who saw a piece of themselves in her. One message in particular stood out. It was from a young woman named Anna in Montana. "I watched your interview last night," the message read. "I've always struggled to speak up for myself, but seeing you stand your ground inspired me. Thank you for reminding me that it's okay to have a voice." Carrie smiled, deeply moved. For her, moments like this were what made the spotlight worthwhile. It wasn't about the fame or the headlines. It was about connecting with people and making a difference, no matter how small, calling out her approach, with some expressing disappointment in how the interview played out. Meanwhile, the broader conversation was taking on a life of its own. On morning talk shows, pundits debated the ethics of Melanie's approach, with many criticizing her for crossing the line. "There's a difference between tough journalism and outright ambush," one commentator said on a national morning show. What Carrie did wasn't just a clapback, it was a masterclass in grace under fire. But it wasn't just the media that weighed in. Ordinary people were sharing their own stories of feeling judged or underestimated, drawing parallels to Carrie's experience. Social media became a hub for these discussions, with hashtags like Grace Under Fire and Respect Each Other trending for days. Even Melanie Hayes wasn't immune to the backlash. Clips of her visibly stunned expression were shared widely, often accompanied by captions like, "When your plan backfires." Her regular viewers began to question her tactics, some even expressing regret over how the interview had unfolded. Carrie sat quietly on her back porch, the tranquility of the moment a sharp contrast to the chaos of the past week. Despite the media frenzy and public debate surrounding the interview, she had remained composed, choosing to rise above the drama. When asked about the viral moment, her response was simple yet profound. "I'm just grateful people are talking about the importance of kindness and respect." That's what really matters. Her humility only enhanced the public's admiration for her, as she became a symbol of integrity and grace. While others analyzed the incident, Carrie focused on her next steps, determined to use the newfound attention for something meaningful. A week after the interview, Carrie found herself in a rare moment of peace, sipping tea on her back porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, reflecting on what had transpired. Left a lasting impact on everyone in the room. Melanie's carefully controlled expression slipped, just for a second. Sensing the shift, Carrie leaned back with a small, knowing smile. "Look, I don't expect everyone to see the world the way I do. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to share my story, my music, and yes, my values. If that resonates with people, great. If not, that's okay too. But one thing I'll never do is apologize for being who I am." The audience erupted into thunderous applause, some even rising to their feet in support. Melanie, clearly unsettled but trying to recover, forced a smile. "Well, you certainly know how to make your point," she said, with a hint of forced humor. Carrie returned the smile politely, but her eyes remained steady, unwavering. "I think it's important to stand firm when you believe in something," she said simply. But the real power of Carrie's words wasn't just in how they silenced Melanie, it was in how they resonated with everyone watching. Carrie had turned the tables completely. The impact of her words reached far beyond the studio walls. As the applause died down, the entire energy in the room had shifted. Melanie Hayes, once in full control, now seemed hesitant. Her usual sharpness had been dulled by Carrie's calm and confident responses. It was clear she hadn't expected such grace under pressure, and now she was scrambling to regain control. Flustered, Melanie adjusted her cue cards and attempted to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Well, Carrie," she said with a forced smile, "your passion is undeniable, and I'm sure your fans appreciate that about you." Carrie nodded graciously. "I think passion is something we could all use a little more of, don't you?" The subtle jab wasn't lost on the audience. Laughter rippled through the room, followed by another wave of applause. Melanie chuckled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes, and quickly moved on to wrap up the segment. But the damage was already done. Her words were already making waves. Carrie had taken the moment Melanie had designed to trap her and turned it into a powerful display of integrity and authenticity. Backstage, producers were buzzing. Word of Carrie's response had spread across the production floor. Clips of the moment were being flagged as viral material, and social media coordinators were already preparing to upload it online before the show had even finished airing. In the audience, a middle-aged man leaned over to his wife and whispered, "That was something else. She really stood her ground." His wife nodded, admiration in her eyes. "That's what we need more of, people who don't back down when it matters." Meanwhile, in the green room, Carrie's team exchanged glances of approval. They knew this wasn't just another interview. It was a defining moment. One of her assistants turned to another and said, "This is going to explode online, just wait." And they were right. As the segment ended and the credits rolled, viewers at home were already reaching for their phones. By the time Carrie stepped off the stage, the internet was already lighting up with her words. "Not to dictate what others should believe," Carrie added, her voice unwavering. A few members of the audience clapped, but Melanie wasn't ready to back down. She leaned back in her chair, her smile sharp and unrelenting. "Fair enough," she said, though her tone suggested she didn't really mean it. "But don't you think that as a public figure your truth could have consequences? Maybe even push some of your fans away?" Carrie tilted her head slightly, not dismissive, but completely sure of herself. "I think my fans know who I am. They've supported me for years because they appreciate my honesty. I trust them to make their own decisions, just as I've made mine." Melanie's eyes narrowed. She had been waiting for this moment, the chance to take the conversation beyond polite small talk. By asking for clarification, Carrie subtly shifted the power dynamic. Now, Melanie was the one on the spot. For just a split second she hesitated, but quickly covered it up with a dramatic shrug. "Well, let's just say, not everyone agrees with the stances you've taken on certain issues. Some might even call them outdated." The room went silent. Even the audience didn't know how to react. The tension was thick. Everyone could feel it, unsure of what would happen next, but completely unable to look away. Melanie was ready to push harder, sensing an opportunity to take control. But before she could, Carrie was already forming her response, one that would shift the entire tone of the interview. She took a deep breath, her hands resting calmly in her lap. Carrie rested her hands calmly on her lap. The silence after Melanie's remark was almost heavy, as if the air in the studio had thickened. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how she would respond. With a slight tilt of her head and a steady voice, Carrie spoke. "Outdated?" she repeated, her tone more curious than defensive. "It's interesting that you use that word. To me, holding on to values like kindness, integrity, and faith isn't about being outdated. It's about staying grounded." The audience erupted into applause, a wave of support that even seemed to catch Melanie off guard. But Carrie wasn't finished. She leaned forward slightly, her calm demeanor now carrying a quiet intensity. "You know, Melanie, it's easy to sit here and label someone's beliefs as outdated just because they don't fit a certain narrative. But aren't we here to celebrate diversity? Not just in how we look, but in how we think." Melanie blinked, momentarily caught off guard by the grace and precision of Carrie's words. She opened her mouth to respond, but Carrie kept going, her voice growing steadier with each word. "We live in a world where people are quick to talk over each other, to assume the worst instead of trying to understand. I think we've forgotten how to have real conversations, ones where we don't have to agree on everything but can still respect one another." The studio fell silent again. But this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that follows a truth so powerful it makes people stop and think. Even Melanie seemed, for a moment, at a loss for words. When a talk show host tried to embarrass Carrie Underwood on live TV, she responded with one powerful line that shocked everyone. The studio was filled with excitement, the kind that makes you sit up and pay attention. Carrie Underwood was a guest on Live Tonight with Melanie Hayes, a talk show known for its bold opinions and tough interviews. The stage was ready, the lights were bright, and the audience was eager to watch. Carrie was used to being in the spotlight. With her Grammy Awards, sold-out concerts, and long music career, she had faced difficult questions before. But this interview was different. Melanie Hayes, the host, was famous for her sharp words and love of creating dramatic, viral moments. Her interviews often pushed the limits between entertainment and controversy. And tonight, her target was Carrie the moment Carrie walked on stage, there was a clear tension in the room. She looked confident in a sleek navy pantsuit, her blonde hair framing a calm but determined face. The audience cheered, but Melanie's smile suggested something more. She had a plan, and Carrie was about to walk right into it. At first, the interview seemed normal. Melanie asked about Carrie's new album, her tour, and life as a working mom. Carrie answered warmly, her voice steady and sincere. But then, the questions changed. Melanie started asking about bigger topics, Carrie's faith, her opinions on certain social issues. It became clear that Melanie wasn't going to keep things simple. "I've got to ask," Melanie leaned forward in her chair. "You've been pretty vocal about your personal values, especially on certain political topics. Do you think it's right for someone in your position to share such controversial views?" It was a tricky question, more of a challenge than genuine curiosity. The audience murmured, sensing the tension in the room. Carrie didn't react right away, but you could tell she was thinking carefully.